You're joking, aren't you? It's the Teesside Chef.
Oh, get ready for an umami overload in this video with a Guinness-infused, sensationally golden brown steak and ale pie. Vegetarians and vegans look away now because we have shin beef here, also known as the shank, and this is the perfect cut of beef for a steak and ale pie. I've been lucky enough to get the bones still in mine, so I'm just trimming the meat from the bones now, and I'll be putting those bones in the pie filling pretty soon, along with the marrow, of course, and you'll be able to see what happens to this marrow as the pie filling cooks in a couple of minutes, and you don't want to miss that. And altogether I have around 900 grams of beef shank after taking the bones out, and I've just chopped those into bite-sized pieces, so now I can get on with the filling. One large finely chopped onion that's being cooked for a couple of minutes before adding in 200 grams of grated carrot, and that's around 2 medium carrots. I cooked that for a couple of minutes before adding in around the same weight of sliced mushrooms, 150 to 200 grams. And while all that cooks for another couple of minutes, I'm flash frying my meat to brown it. After seasoning with salt and pepper, of course, to which I can now add my cooked vegetables. And I can also begin building up the flavours, kicking off with a couple or 3 cloves of garlic, a teaspoon of mustard, a tablespoon of tomato puree, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, and a generous 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, and around 1.5 tablespoons of Worcester sauce, although soy sauce works as a decent substitute. And I have included a level teaspoon each of dried thyme, oregano, parsley and rosemary here. And I simply must include a 1/2 teaspoon of sugar just to take the edge off the sourness of what is coming next, and prepare yourselves for this, because this is the exciting bit. Well, I suppose it's exciting if you don't have much of a life like me, but this is the kind of thing that gets me up in the morning, because we're adding our wonderful Guinness in now, the black stuff. I have to say I can't drink it on its own because I'm much more of a baby sham man, but in this pie, Guinness works like magic. And I'm putting around 1/2 litre in here, 500 millilitres, but if you're a furious Brexit here, just put a pint of Guinness in. You don't have to be too exact, because we will be adding water in, and I started there with 200 millilitres, but I'll add a little bit more later to bring the filling to the correct texture to go in the pastry. And I promised you bones, so here they come now, and do try to get the bones on your beef shin if you can, so that you too can enjoy struggling to get them in your pan in a way that will allow all of that marrow to melt away, and seeing that happen is oddly satisfying, so stick around for those bones coming out of the stew in about 90 seconds. I've knocked the heat down now. I'm going to simmer this for between 2 to 2.5 hours with the lid on while I get on with the pastry, which is 400 grams of plain all-purpose flour, to which I've added a teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, and a level teaspoon each of dried thyme and oregano, and my secret ingredient, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and that's going to raise the pH of the dough, which will help the pastry brown more when it bakes. To that I'm adding 200 grams of cubed butter, and I'm blending all that together in a food processor, but you can rub this all together with your hands if you don't have a blender. And to finish up, 2 beaten eggs and a tablespoon or 2 of milk. I'm just going to give this a little stir together while it's in my machine, just to help the blender out a bit. And if you do use a blender for your pastry, and I can recommend that you do that, it makes it much easier. You need to blend it very slowly at the end here to bring it all together, rather than whipping it all up crackers, and then after that you can give it a little bit of a knead together with your hands. And I'm going to cut this in half now and wrap it in cling film before fridging it for at least half an hour, and then you can take it out of the fridge after half an hour to let it come to room temperature before you need to roll it out and whatnot. So anyway, after 2 to 2.5 hours, the stew pie filling is just about done. It's exciting, and here are those bones coming out now, and that marrow I showed you earlier has melted away into the stew to give a lavish umami richness, which has to be tasted to be believed, because even my flamboyant description of the wonders of this pie filling doesn't do it justice. Now I like to add a little more water at this stage and cook for a little longer to really break the meat down and render out all of the fat from the meat, but you don't have to do that. Some people like a little more texture and chew in their meat, but my delicate sensibilities implore me to cook this beef shin until it's melt in the mouth tender. So I've given it an extra half an hour or so here before the most important step to making the perfect steak and ale pie, and that is to reach the ideal consistency of our steak and ale pie filling. And it's a little watery here, but that doesn't mean I've ballsed up and put too much liquid in, because we want a nice juicy pie with enough gravy, so I'll just thicken this now with a cornstarch slurry, around 2 teaspoons of cornstarch with cold water, which I will add and then cook until my filling is thickened, and after a few minutes we can already see that happening. And as I drag my spoon through the filling here, you can see it will almost hold its shape before oozing back slowly, and that is how we know we've cracked it, and can leave this rich, meaty filling to cool completely before building what will ultimately become the greatest steak and ale pie that I have ever tasted, and that is a bold statement indeed from someone with extremely exacting steak pie standards. I'm preparing my pie glaze here, 2 egg yolks and a splash of milk. That'll give us a smashing golden finish to our pie top, and you'll see that in a couple of minutes. I have a 28cm pie dish here, but don't worry if your pie dish is a bit smaller. Everything will still work out fine. And I shall now roll out my relaxed pastry, making sure I get a nice circular-ish shape by flipping every now and again and giving it a quarter turn. And you want to keep everything well dusted with flour so your pastry doesn't stick, and you'll know if it's sticking because it won't move when you're rolling it, so watch out for that. You shouldn't really be rolling it too thin here. This is the outer edge, so don't go any thinner than a few millimetres, and of course I want to make sure the pastry is big enough once rolled. After which I can fold it into a little parcel and unfold in the pie dish, and if it rips or falls apart, don't panic, just smush it into the pan, because you'll have plenty of time to tidy it all up, and nobody will ever know that you had to wrestle with your pastry to get it in your pie dish, will they? I mean, even I can do this right, and I'm a bit dim, so I'm sure you'll be okay. It's just like playing with plasticine, isn't it, really? And most of your TV chefs or bakers trim the edges with a sharp knife, but I use scissors because it seems more logical to me. And I'm just collecting these pastry offcuts because I'll be using them very soon, so don't click away just yet, that's coming up very soon. And my fully cooled filling can go in now, and you can see there that it looks a little bit dry, but I can assure you that it's not. The fat has firmed up a little in the cooling process, and the gravy is thickened to an almost solid consistency, but the juiciness of this filling will be unleashed during the pie cooking process, so don't let your eyes deceive you here. And after I've flattened down the filling, I'm going to just make sure to press down really well at the edges, because I need good access to those edges in order to brush them with my egg yolk milk mixture, and that's going to act like a glue to stick the top of the pie to the bottom of the pie. So let's get the top of the pie rolled out instead of messing about, and with another generous dusting of flour and the old lift and flip with a quarter turn every time, that should come out nice and circular. Make sure the pastry's big enough again, obviously, with a pan comparison. And now we can roll it up around the old rolling pin and unroll it on top of the prepared pie, where I can thereafter press in the edges to stick the whole thing down and trim with the scissors that I definitely don't use to trim my nose and ear hair, honest. And I'm already getting a little twitching in my loins of excitement here, but this little egg wash will really bring me to a climax of joy once this pie is baked, as you will see very soon. I'm using those offcuts, and I cut some stars out of them, and I'm just placing them on top now. Obviously, they will need an egg wash, and placing these on after the first egg wash just helped them to stick. There's another little trick to get the best finish out of your pie, which I will show you after pressing down these edges with a fork here, and that little trick will make this pie look so beautiful and golden that you'll think that you're on Instagram by mistake. So it's on a baking sheet now, and now I have to wait until the first coat is dry, and it will be a little tacky, which I'm just checking here. And now, here comes the scoop. I'm going to coat it with the second egg wash, and the second coat really brings out that deep golden colour in the finished pie, which you're going to see very soon. I've got a large cross in the middle too, which will help steam escape as it bakes in a preheated oven set to 175 degrees Celsius with the fan on. That's around 350 Fahrenheit. You want to bake it for around 60 minutes, and if your oven doesn't have a fan, put your temperature up about 10%, and you can see it bubbling away there. And if your top is getting a bit darker than you'd like, turn your fan off if you have it on and place some foil loosely on top. for the remainder of the baking time. Here it comes now, and I'm really glad I filmed this one because that might be the best looking pie I've ever made or even seen. Beautiful golden pastry, and you want to leave it now for around 45 minutes before cutting into this if you can, after which time you will find a glistening, meaty, rich steak and ale sensation, perfectly baked, and you can pat me on the back for making this by liking and subscribing, and join me again next time for more of my genius. Alright, bye-bye now. Ta-ra.